Good morning, good evening, good day, and welcome to Dramabuds. I'm Francine, I really love K-dramas, and I'm going to spend as much time as I want talking about them. Welcome to my podcast. So yes, hello, I'm Francine. A little background on me and why I'm actually doing this. I've been a K-pop fan since 2012 and I've stayed pretty far away from K-dramas for all these years. I don't really know why. I guess I thought it was all cliche and cheesy and all the usual criticisms and stereotypes of K-dramas that non-watchers would say. And then, quarantine happened. I've been trapped at home with my sister, and for the past 7 months, all we've been doing was watching K dramas every single night. I really can only recall a few nights, a few days in the past 7 months when I didn't watch at least one episode of a K drama. So it's really just taken over our lives, and it's still going to take over our lives probably for as long as we're at home and stuck with each other. So the first episode of our podcast, my podcast, will be talking about an SBS drama called You Like Brahms, starring Park Eun-bin and Kim Min-jae. This ended a few weeks ago, but I just liked the show so much that I decided, why not start a podcast talking about it? Just because I feel like it was not talked about nearly enough compared to what I think it deserved. So the synopsis of the show is that they're classical music majors who find their own happiness while learning music. And honestly, it's a bit dry. It sounds boring when you read it like that. But to be honest, the only reason why my sister and I decided to watch this show or start it when it was still ongoing was because she recently became a fan of the first gen K-pop group GOD, and it was announced that they were going to release their very first OST in their 20-year career, their very first OST for the show. So she said, I've just recently discovered them. This is a big thing because it's never happened. So we should support the drama. And it was honestly just a random decision. We came into it with no expectations, to be honest. And we honestly have very short attention spans. Like we have this system where we would first watch the first two episodes of a show to decide, okay, is the pilot week worth it? If not, we drop it. If it's kind of okay, we watch until the sixth episode. And then we decide, okay, is there anything going on in this story that's worth continuing until the end? And if it passes the sixth episode test, well, okay, fine. We're in it for the long haul. We're almost halfway there. We might as well just keep going till the end. And what happened with the show was, I honestly don't understand how we got so invested within the first six episodes. Actually, it started the six episode test for us, because by the sixth episode we were all in for these characters, and we were so invested that we would wake up at 7:30 a.m. every Tuesday and Wednesday, just so this would be the very first thing we would do. We would watch because we couldn't get through our day without knowing what happened in the episode today. That's honestly crazy. And I did not expect that we would be this invested in a show that had, honestly such a boring premise. So when talking about the show, it's hard to discuss the plot without discussing the characters, because I really think there isn't much going on in this show, but it's really the characters that give it heart and totally drive like everything that's going on, more so than usual shows, because there's really not much dramatic tension, not much going on aside from their own internal conflicts and their relationships with one another. So the show starts with Chae played by Park Eun-bin. So she is a woman in her late 20s, At first, she pursued a business degree, and then, she fell in love with the violin and she decided to pursue music. So this is now her second degree as a violin major, and she's 29 years old or something. And to be honest, she's not very good at it. She loves it, but she started out so late. She only started studying it in her 20s when she really fell in love with the instrument. And so even if she got into this prestigious university with a great curriculum for violin, she is honestly way behind compared to her other peers, because they've been studying the violin since they were children, since some were started at 5-6 years old, and she started 5-6 years ago. And so it really shows in her performance and just the musicality of how she studies and how she performs. And in the first episode, the big moment was she was going to perform with the orchestra of her school in this performance hall that to her seemed like, this dream, like this big milestone that she was finally performing in this art hall. Meanwhile, others, have had recitals there when they were children, and to them, it's like nothing. So she was so excited for it. She worked so hard, but the conductor found something wrong with the acoustics of the venue, and so we decided, we need to take out a few people from the violins. And because she was the last in her class, she had the lowest grades. She was the last chair, and she was asked to leave. And so she was fighting for it. She was kind of pleading, almost begging, like, please just let me perform or let me rehearse with you. And it was honestly, in the first episode, it was just so painful to watch her like plead and to beg just to perform, just to rehearse. And so honestly, in that moment, you could really see how earnestly she wanted to play the violin. But she was even being berated for having low grades. Like, if you want to perform, if you want to be here, get better grades. And that's just such a difficult thing to tell someone, honestly. It's pretty cruel. And in that moment, as the conductor was berating her, that's where she meets Park Jun-young, played by Kim Min-jae. He's a world-famous pianist who just came back from a concert tour, I think, and he announced that he was taking a sabbatical, but before that, he was going to perform as the accompanist of this orchestra. And, seeing how embarrassed she already was and how tense the situation was getting, he did something on the piano, he dropped something, and he was essentially able to divert attention away from Chae Song-ah. And, she eventually accepted that, she wouldn't be able to perform today. And that was honestly just the start of, their many serendipitous meetings, I would say, because later Chae Song-ah starts working for the Kyung Foundation that, Jun-young is affiliated with, since they supported him financially all his career. And in general, the plot revolves around these two and their own dreams, their individual journeys, their insecurities, and just navigating the music world alongside with their relationship to each other and to their friends and their families and such. And so the setting changes from Kyung-hoo Foundation during Song-ah's summer break, where she was an intern there, until the break ended and they went back to school in Soryong University, where they were both music students when the semester started again. And now, much of the conflict of the show really starts because of supporting character, Lee Jong-kyung, played by Park Ji-hyun. Lee Jong-kyung is the child of a famous pianist who died when she was a teenager, I think, or even younger. And she used to be a child prodigy in the violin, but life happened, and as she grew older, she just failed to sustain that momentum and that skill. She was seen as, a bird with clipped wings, so to speak. She is the granddaughter of director na of the Kyung-hoo Foundation, which once again is the group that gave Jun-young a scholarship and supported his career up until now. And aside from all of that, she is one of Jun-young's closest friends and the girlfriend of Jun-young's best friend, Han Yeon-ho, played by Kim Song-chol. Han Yeon-ho is, once again, best friends with Park Jun-young. He's an excellent cellist. He graduated summa cum laude and even got his PhD from Juilliard, I think. So despite all his individual achievements and all, Yeon-ho's main motivation in life really is to be good enough for Jung-kyung because he's from a middle-class family, I would say. And Jung-kyung's this, rich, intimidating daughter of a foundation owner. She's the heir to this empire. And, he's just someone she met in high school. And he really had to, earn his place. And he wanted to say that he deserved her. I guess that's how I read his character. And that was a big conflict in the show. Now, aside from Junyoung's friends, Songa also had her own side of the story, her own net of relationships. So her friends are Yoon Dong-yoon, played by Lee Yoo-jin, and Kang Min-song, played by Bae Da-bin. So Dong-yoon is a luthier. He makes and repairs string instruments. Yes, and he just came home to Korea after studying abroad and developing his client base and such. And Min-song is a grad student who also played violin at the time. And they all met in their college, their university days, playing in a chamber orchestra, I think. And so they've been close friends for all this time. But actually, Dong-yoon and Min-song are exes. And though that was many years ago, Min-song still has feelings for him. Now, Dong-yoon and Songa really became close because he was the one who taught Songa how to play the violin to prepare for her exam to get into Soryong University. And surprise, surprise, Che Songa developed feelings for him ever since then. But of course, since that was her best friend's ex, he's off limits to her. And that is the start of, their conflict as friends. Now, the thing about this show and the thing that might put off some people is that there are some complicated love triangles. And by complicated, I don't know if it's a hexagon. I just think it's a web at this point. There's Dong-yoon, Min-song, Song-a, Yeon-ho, Jung-kyung, Jun-young, and then, the intersection of those two when Jun-young and Song-a start developing a relationship. It's kind of insane. But to break it down, the first major love triangle will be Dong-yoon, Min-song, and Song-a. And so, of course, the conflict is that that's your best friend's ex. And although Song-a never really did anything about her feelings with Dong-yoon, when Dong-yoon came back, Min-song still had feelings for him and they ended up having a one-night stand, I think so. But Dong-yoon kind of shut it down and said, that was a mistake. That's never gonna happen again. Let's not mention this, especially to Song-a. You know why? Because apparently Dong-yoon had feelings for her all this time as well. That's crazy. But the thing is, Song-a is a good friend. Song-a is a good friend who did not do anything about those feelings. She really just held it in the entire time. And honestly, watching her was kind of sad because, girl didn't have to hold on to this guy. He wasn't really worth it. But better things were coming for her. We swear. So the next complicated love triangle, which is even more complex than the previous one, is the triangle among Yeon-ho, Jung-kyung, and Jun-young. So this one is pretty complex because they were, at the start of the show, Yeon-ho and Jung-kyung were still in a relationship. They were still going strong. But then both of them came back to Korea after finishing their studies and they were ready to kind of settle down here. But then Jung-kyung decided to break up with Yeon-ho because she wanted to pursue her feelings for Jun-young. That's crazy. She broke up I think it was almost 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. That was almost a 10-year relationship. And what made this situation even stickier was that Yeon-ho and Jung-kyung were both applying to be professors at Soryong University. And so they would always see each other. And the thing is, it's just so difficult for Yeon-ho specifically because his entire life, he was kind of living it for Jonghyun to be good enough for her. And then suddenly that's taken away from him and he lost kind of his purpose in life. So he's just trying to find a path for himself, right? To carve his own path because now he's kind of lost. But he has to carve this path while beating or essentially competing with Jonghyun, who is also kind of lost in life. And this is kind of her last bet to get away from her fate of being the director of Kyungho Foundation, which she doesn't want to be. Meanwhile, we have the most complicated love triangle of all the love triangles, which is the one with Jongkyung, Junyoung, and Song-ah. That's the central love triangle, I would say. Thing is, Junyoung and Song-ah, they met a lot. They met up a lot and they really found comfort in each other. They witnessed some of each other's worst moments and were there to comfort one another. And the relationship really developed very smoothly and very sweetly. However, even when they started, officially dating and officially becoming a couple, there was always Jonghyun who was there, who has always been there in Junyoung's life. And so it was always causing conflict between Junyoung and Song-ah because Song-ah was really insecure of how much time Jonghyun and Junyoung have spent with each other and how much history they have with each other. However, even if we initially thought that Junyoung really loved Jonghyun, which may be sort of true, he kind of realized that his feelings for Jonghyun were so complex because he was both her friend and also a charity case to her family. And so it was just a mix of, is this friendship, is this love, or is this indebtedness? And so he was never really able to clear that up in himself until he met Song-ah and realized, okay, this is what love was supposed to feel like. It wasn't supposed to be this complicated. And he realized he didn't love Jonghyun enough to break her relationship with Yeonho. It was really just Jonghyun who broke it off with her boyfriend and would constantly assert herself as the one who has been there in Junyoung's life all this time and thus would deserve to be with him. To Song-ah, who was already feeling insecure about so many things, including Junyoung's history with Jonghyun. Honestly, there's way more to this show than the insanely complicated love triangles. I mean, it's not complicated. It's just a lot of characters at once. And it's difficult to break it down like this because they all kind of happen at the same time as Junyoung and Song-ah's relationship develops. But I think the beauty of this show is really how it handled all of that. How it was kind of annoying at some points that we were still dealing with this love triangle with Jonghyun, Junyoung, and Song-ah, even if Junyoung and Song-ah were supposed to be happy in their relationship. But the thing is, sometimes that's life. Sometimes people are just like that they can't let go of this idea in their head and they keep pursuing it, even though it's really not going to work out. And that's actually kind of the major theme of this show for me. It's pursuing things perhaps that you love but aren't meant for you. And you can kind of see that in each of their lives, specifically in Chae Song-ah. She is really one of my favorite female protagonists because her struggle, her conflict, her internal struggle is that she's pursuing something that she really loves, but she's not good at it. And, people would say, just keep working hard, or, you can do it. You just have to keep trying. But the world keeps telling her, no matter how hard you try, you're just not good at this. She's not bad necessarily, but she's not good enough to really push herself in such a career that's so difficult to really succeed in. What she wants for herself is so difficult to achieve, to be, a successful violinist or to even get into an orchestra, to experience all the joys, the highs and the lows of being a musician. It's difficult when you're unable to establish yourself because you don't have the individual skill. And it's sad because you watch her peers, her professors looking down on her constantly, but she just keeps trying. One of the worst moments in the show was when her advisor in university asked her to essentially be her personal assistant and help her arrange a chamber orchestra performance for a new chamber orchestra. And so Songa was doing everything. She was handling finances, reservations, recruiting all the people, making sure that they're informed of what to do and when to practice. And, all members of the orchestra were required to buy some tickets for their show just to fill out the seats. And then during the company dinner where everyone was there, she showed her professor the list of tickets that they bought, and her professor asked her, I noticed that you bought some tickets. You don't have to do that. It's only for those who are performing. And so Songa asked, am I not performing? Am I not being your assistant so I could also perform in this orchestra? And her professor said, no, I only gathered the talented students and the talented musicians. And at that moment, you just really see her heart breaking. It's like, I've worked so hard for something, and you were supposed to be my advisor. You're supposed to encourage me and help me grow. And instead, you've just used me. You've just used my work ethic and my dedication to something and my enthusiasm for this for nothing. And so many of her scenes are really just difficult to watch because she is pursuing something that just seems so out of reach for her, no matter how hard she works. On the other end, for Park Jun-young, his struggle is really about having to pursue something that you don't want to do anymore, and yet not knowing what exactly it is you want to do. I mean, at a young age, Jun-young's life has been the piano. When he was given the scholarship by Kyung-ho Foundation, that basically set him on the path to greatness. And so, basically, since he was a child, this is all he knows how to do. And his mentor, although he did help him win a lot of competitions and establish himself, he basically made competitions seem like a battleground, really. And it was mentally, traumatizing for a young child to base your entire self-esteem or your entire life on a single thing, on playing the piano. An interesting moment was when Jun-young and his mentor were arguing about something, and Jun-young said, you always told me to aim for getting an 8 or a 9 out from all of the judges, but you never believed that I could get a 10. And so I don't know, I just thought about that line for such a long time, that his mentor, the one person who's supposed to be there for him, never truly believed that he was great, but just made him seek results for both of their pride, for both of their reputations. The worst part was that Jun-young actually took a break from playing the piano and competing because his recent competition, he only ended up in second place. And, he was essentially seen as like, yeah, he's a great pianist, sure, but he's kind of going down now. There are younger, better musicians rising in the scene, and he's really not the greatest anymore. And so when you're facing that point in your career, you'd either try to hold on to whatever fame or whatever glory you could, or you just let it go. And Jun-young was on the path to letting that go. He was on a sabbatical already, but he was facing a lot of financial issues from his father, always, getting loans and incurring debts from other people. And the worst part was that other than just asking money from him, his father would also ask money from Kyung-ho Foundation, from Director Na, and from Jong-kyung. And imagine the feeling that, your entire life has been, supported by these people, and they continue to support you. And it's not really gratitude anymore. It's just frustration that you're unable to stand for yourself. And I think that's really one of the reasons why he could never pursue this relationship with Jong-kyung, because he could never separate the idea of her being Jong-kyung, being his best friend's girlfriend, and also being, part of the family that he kind of owes his entire life to. And the thing is, at this age, he's been playing the the piano for so long and it's just never made him happy. He's just so miserable when he does it. But because he doesn't know anything else all his life, ever since he was a kid, he was studying the piano. Where else could he go? What else could he do with his life? And that's honestly such a painful struggle as well, to be gifted with something but you don't want it. That was also a point of conflict between Songa and Junyoung in a few episodes, where Songa wanted it so bad, but music she didn't seem to be blessed with being good at music. Meanwhile, Junyoung was so blessed. He had a good career, honestly, if he just kept going, but he didn't want it. And so he blamed talent as a curse. Meanwhile, to Songa, it was a blessing that she wasn't given. For me, I think the beauty of this show is really how it navigated their struggles with their dreams, with their careers, and how it also intertwined that with their romantic relationships. Like an interesting parallel with Songa's character is how she was very insecure about Jungkyung and Junyoung's relationship, their long time history, and how she also kind of compared that to her time spent playing the violin, that she wasn't good. She could never be good enough. She could never really catch up to her peers because they had years and years of history and practice compared to her. And that's also kind of her situation with Junyoung and with Jungkyung. But I think what cemented Songa as my favorite female protagonist of all time was the conclusion to her story. She decided not to pursue her master's degree in the violin, even though she passed the exam, she did. But she decided not to pursue it, and instead she worked for Kyungho Foundation because she had a business degree. She was really good at taking care of artists and organizing events for them. And so in K-dramas, we're so used to the story of the underdog overcoming all of their struggles, starting from nothing and working their way to the top. And that's the inspirational story. That's the moral lesson, that you just have to keep trying and you will succeed. But in this story, she started out kind of at the bottom, and no matter how hard she tried, it just never worked out. And so she quit. And what's wrong with quitting sometimes? What's wrong with really just knowing and accepting that maybe this isn't meant for you, and just going with something that you're good at, or something that can, sustain you and keep you going, keep you living. I think it's just so rare and so refreshing to see that in K-dramas, where, we're used to the big triumphant hero moments, but rarely do we just see someone fail. And yet, life goes on. Life goes on even after failure or even after giving up. Chesonga is a rare female protagonist for me. And I actually saw a lot of similarities between her and Janggure in Miseng, played by Im Shi-won, who is my favorite male protagonist of all time. Because similar to her, he started out as nothing, and no matter how hard he tried, although he had some small victories, at the end of the show, he did not achieve whatever his initial goal was. I will make an episode for Miseng because I also love that show, and I will thoroughly discuss Janggure. But in summary, these two are my favorite protagonists of all time because their story is not really a story of, inspirational triumph. Because people get inspiration from seeing others succeed. Sometimes it's inspiring to see others fail and yet keep going. Because our lives aren't K-dramas. They're not filled with magic and, hard work and constantly succeeding or eventually reaching our dreams. Sometimes we just have to accept that things are the way they are. And we can still keep going and keep living. That life is still worth living even if you're not the best at something, or even if you haven't really achieved whatever dream you've set out for yourself. It's a little sad to talk about it, but for me, that's inspiring. For me, it's really refreshing, and I love Chesonga. She's a wonderful character, and Park Eun-bin's performance is amazing. Like, I don't know how to explain how good she is in this show, because I think if it were any other actress, that maybe they would have played Songa as someone who's just very, timid and very soft and someone who, is easy to step on and people just step on her. But Song-a has a quiet strength, I would say, that she really is just very introspective and she allows things to happen, but she's able to stand up for herself because she knows what she wants. And even in giving up, it's not just about being stubborn and having tenacity and all that. Like, sometimes knowing when to quit is also a strength, and it's a sign that she really has finally listened to herself and listened to the world and found something that is better for her and could still make her happy, even if it's not her dream. Like, the finale was really about her letting go slowly of music. And it was sad. It was really sad to watch. But once again, just because she didn't achieve her big fantastic dream doesn't mean that her life can't keep going on and that she can't be happy anymore, because she still found happiness. Another thing I really loved about this show was the pacing. And other people would say that the show is so slow, that nothing happens. And I think that's just fact. I've accepted that. It's hard for me to recommend this show to others because I feel like they're going to say, Francine, your taste is so boring. Why do you like a show like this? But for me, I think it's perfectly paced, in which sometimes in life, nothing much happens. Sometimes in life, but they really took their time in developing the characters and developing their struggles. And for me, the build-up of the relationship between Song-a and Junyoung it's slow, but things are happening. And you can really see why these two people ended up falling for each other, because they really comforted each other and they found solace in each other in their lives that often cause them a lot of pain and hardship. It's kind of amazing and kind of impossible, I guess, to find someone who just gives you so much comfort. And yet that comfort is still disrupted by other people in their lives. And that's where it kind of gets annoying, where, Jongkyung just won't give up, and people are still being so negative and so toxic to Song-a and to Junyoung. But I think everything was perfectly balanced in how the relationship developed and how it continued, and how it was never really happily ever after when they got together. They got together towards the middle of the show, and they still face a lot of, struggles and conflicts and naysayers from the people in their lives. And although they did break up for a time near the end, which was very annoying, it made sense that they broke up, because they started out with really good communication, but it was mostly Song-a who was, communicating really well. Junyoung had some problems with telling her about his relationship with Jongkyung and why he really just couldn't cut her off, because she was part of his life already. And the ending of the show for Junyoung was a little bittersweet as well, in which he had to continue, playing the piano, because really, that's all he knew how to do. I mean, at least Song-a had a business degree, but Junyoung really didn't have anything. He only knew how to play the piano, and so he still had some financial struggles from his family, and so he had to keep working, But he still was able to be happy because he realized that his self-worth, his entire life, doesn't have to revolve around playing the piano, around being a successful pianist. Now he had Song-a. He had people who loved and supported him. He was able to patch things up with his mother, and, he found support in her as well. And because, his unrequited love for Jongkyung was finally resolved, like that's done and over with, he could finally stand on his own and not wonder, what if I confess to her? What if we were meant to work out? Like, that's done. And he could finally be content with something in his life. Now, another thing I appreciated in this show was actually Jongkyung. I appreciated how, no matter how annoying she was, no matter how much you wanted to really hate her for me, I never hated her. I think a part of me always kind of understood her in a bit. Like, I understood her motivations, her struggles. And so I think that's a sign of good writing. That there's this character that's so easy to hate. It's so easy to just write her off as this annoying antagonist who won't give up. But if you look at her story, if you look at her struggles and listen to her insecurities and all that, you kind of understand where she's coming from. Personally, she has a really great individual journey. I mean, she was coming from being the daughter of a famous pianist who died at a young age. She was a prodigy. She used to be amazing. People used to project that she would be just one of the greatest violinists out there or something. And yet, she didn't turn out how people expected her to be. And so they always looked at her with pity, that she was kind of a failure, that she never took off the way she was supposed to, unlike her mother. And now, her entire life has been essentially dictated for her, or she kind of knew exactly where she was going to go, and that she was going to inherit the foundation from her grandmother, and that she would end up just like her because, she doesn't have musical skills. She's not that great of a violinist, so she might as well just work on the business end of music. But for once in her life, she just wanted to choose something for herself. She wanted to make her own path, and that's why she kept pushing to be a professor instead of being the heir to the foundation. She wanted to prove that she could achieve something of her own merit. And so even if she was an antagonist in the romantic plotline or the relationship between Junyoung and Song-ah, I think as a character, she was just incredibly fleshed out, and maybe her insecurities in life were also kind of being reflected in how she treated and saw Junyoung and how she wanted him. And I think that's just good writing. You don't create a character just to be the conflict. You create a character with their own conflicts. And I know people hate Jongkyung, but if you just try to understand her, she's actually just an excellent character. Maybe not a great person, but there are people like her in life, There are people who won't give up. So she's not unrealistic. And you can still sympathize with her because of that. So, in summary, this show is not perfect, I mean, it is a little bit slow. It does get annoying at times, the love triangles, the numerous love triangles. But I think the strength of the show is really in its characters and the themes and their individual journeys. And I think it's the kind of K-drama that you really have to savor and watch slowly. It's not a binge-worthy show. It's not the kind that will give you extreme, sweet, cheesy moments. I mean, it is very cute at times. And the chemistry between the leads is top-notch. I could believe that it's a real relationship. I wish it were, because they're both lovely people. But I think what's most important about this show is that it's just well written, it's well done, and it's different. It tells you a lot of stories and lessons in life that you might not often get in K-dramas. And I think it just deserves so much more praise than what it's got. For those who have heard of this drama and thought, sounds boring, or for those who have heard that it's boring, I really suggest you give it a try. It's a slow watch, it's pretty sweet, it's very soft, the leads they're charming and they're great actors, actually. They did a lot of justice to their characters. There are some iconic moments that I honestly did not catch until I read up on it on Twitter and stuff. I think it's a good watch for those who are searching for a melodrama that's slow and sweet and a little bit sad, if that's the kind of mellow that you're into, but not over dramatic, not too tragic, not too cheesy. Just right. So that's it for today. I hope that this gives people enough of a view or an idea of what Do You Like Brahms is about. I'm sorry I spoiled the ending, but it's not a sad ending, so I hope people still give it a chance and are able to watch it someday because it's a really, really great show. So thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. I don't know when I'll be back. I don't know what I'll be talking about next. It'll probably be missing because I adore that show to bits, but we'll see. Thank you for listening and see you soon.